Oh hi. Vrsar, the city in Croatia, on the western coast of the Istrian Peninsula in the Adriatic Sea. The population on a census of 2001 1871 persons. Vrsar is on the coast in 10 km to the south from Poric, to the north from Rovin, and the Lima Gulf city is founded on the place of the Roman settlement of Vrsaria. It is possible to reach Vrsar practically on any of the buses going from Poric. The nearest airport is in the city of Pula. This city is known thanks to the resorts and hotel infrastructure. The neighborhood of the city is picturesque, beaches are well equipped. Along the line of the coast a set of bars, cafe and small restaurants is located.
The Vrsar Hotel, which received the name from the nearby island, is in 1.5 km from the city and several decades is one of the centers of the international naturism.
Etymology. The name of the city in medieval documents can be met in various options. Most likely, it comes from armor. Ursus, bear, indirect confirmation of it ministers a municipal coat of arms. The Italian name Vrsara also came from Vrssaria, however Pietro Coppo, the Italian geographer of the 16th century, by mistake connected it with Orsini's family, claiming that in the memory of this surname the city and received the name.
Also there is a version about a city pro rank in honor of the Archbishop of Urso from Ravenna.
In the early Middle Ages, Slavs adapted the ancient name for the pronunciation. In Croatian the sound of U was transformed by V, and the termination O disappeared. Thus there was a modern name Vrsar. Vrsar's population from a century by a century changed the ethnic players.
It is possible to refer Massachusetts' departure from these places of Italians, which happened after World War II when Istria departed to Croatia, to modern history.
As a part of Yugoslavia. Then they become empty villages immigrants from the island of Brač occupied. Now Vrsar, the multinational city with the primary Croatian population.
Its city harbor was in its current form created in the 19th century when numerous buildings were beyond old city walls and were located up to the coastal line.
Around the harbor are mentioned in medieval hagiographies of the place as Fabian. From 12th to the 17th century warehouses of the Porečski archdiocese were located here. From the Lima Gulf the archaeological zone from the remains of the Roman country houses stretches to Fontana. Around the Gulf many public buildings of that era are also found. In 1540 in the researches Pietro Coppo noted that, along a balshy part of the coast, there are remains of ancient buildings which bear to the numerous buildings built in these parts. The Roman warehouses and the cemetery were found when carrying out excavation in 1928.
At the time of domination on these lands of the Roman Empire, Vrsar was the important large center with brisk trade. The rectangular building of a warehouse about 70 meters long found at excavation also bears to it.
From south side of the Cape Montrica, which limits the city harbor from the north, the remains of the Roman cemetery are also found. As usual, ashes from the burned corpses were located in ballot boxes and were dug in.
In this regard, the tombstone carried by archaeologists by the 2nd century became very valuable find.
The only monument such, found at excavation in these parts, was established by the loving husband on the wife's grave. St. George's Church costs on the island of the same name near the city harbour. Repaired in 1995, it changed the original form, increased to apsis. Some historians make the assumption that the ancient Roman city of Vrsar was located on this island.
A copy of the Roman map created between 3rd and 4th century also bears to it, however archaeological researches on the island weren't conducted yet.
Church Street. Foscate, the church constructed in the first half of the 17th century in style the Renaissance with some elements of Baroque. It is called for the sake of the Christian martyr of the 3rd century. The facade of the building of Renaissance and a door conducting to the temple look pretty simply. Initially in the top part of the building 2 bells were placed. The first of them was made in the 16th century at the Venetian foundry and removed during World War I, and subsequently is replaced with the bell made in 1922 at Lapidna foundry in the Italian city of Trieste, the second with street. Foschi's images, Madonna's choir and a crucifixion, made in 1680. At the time of World War II both bells were removed by Italians, however weren't used in the military purposes and subsequently were placed on a campanile of Parish Street Martin's Church. Recently the Church Street Foschi was repaired. Internal furniture of the temple is decorated by the picture, Street. Foschi's baptism of blood dated the 17th century. Gravestones with the coats of arms and texts in Latin are also of a sole historical interest. Before the main altar there is a grave of the Croatian priest Luka Prodanic. Died in 1659.
Blessed Virgin Mary's Basilica of the 12th century, one of the few churches which remained in the territory of Istria, is the most interesting monument in Roman style. There is an assumption that Rusticus's country house, including a country house and the building of a farm, was in its place in the Roman times.
Between 8th and 12th centuries the church was reconstructed more than once, what can find confirmation, having attentively studied its walls. After the 12th century the building takes the form which reached our time. The last reconstruction was carried out in 1969. In the top part of a facade of the building executed in typical Roman style the round window is placed. In the one arch belfry located on east side of the building the bell cast in 1922 at the Lapidna plant in the Italian city of Trieste. Near a northern wall of the temple it is possible to see the remains of the old cemetery. New was opened in 1900 outside the city limits. The dark interior of a basilica divided into 3 naves by heavy arches of Roman style and monolithic round columns looks impressively and creates the atmosphere of old Christian churches. East part of an interior comes to an end with 3 apses. A floor has no valuable covering and it can be connected with a raising of its level at reconstruction.
This visual impression is spoken well also by rather low columns breaking Romance harmony of a church interior.
In the past a floor was covered with gravestones with the texts traced on them in Latin. One such plate was kept in a church presbytery. Internal walls were decorated with frescoes on a religious subject earlier. Executed in the 9th-10th centuries, in the 16th century by the unknown artist they were redrawn anew. The basilica ornamented earlier reached out of time and utter desertion. Virgin Mary statue dated the 14th century is stolen about 20 years ago. Pictures of a brush of ancient Venetian masters also disappeared. Only the painting representing Virgin Mary and communities of saints survived. In 1177 the Pope Alexander III, following from Venice to Ancona, stopped in Vrsar for 3 days and ministered a Massachusetts in this building.
The ancient Christian church, the temple located near Virgin Mary's Basilica and which kept the mosaic fragments of a floor dated the 4th century till our time, is the oldest Christian building in the territory of Istria.
The first Christians who appeared in these parts in the 2-3 century, apparently, made worship service ceremonies in private buildings.
Most likely, this basilica was built in the 4th century after the Emperor Constantine proclaimed the Milan Decree religious indulgence in the territory of the Roman Empire. Fragments of the temple were dug out in 1935 by the Italian archaeologist Mario Mirabella Roberti. The building of church is typical for ancient Christian architecture and originally represented the rectangular building in the 6th century complemented with an apse. Half of the temple was covered with the multicolor mosaics decorated with the ancient iconography displaying mainly flower,
leaves, wreaths, baskets with grapes, and animals, fishes, peacocks, pigeons, motifs. The central part of a floor consists of 73 circles connected among themselves. At the time of invasion of Slavs, the 7th century, of a basil it was almost completely destroyed, and its remained part is transformed to the olive plant. Now fragments of the building are covered with the earth and aren't available to survey.
Church Street Martin's Church. The history of creation of the temple is quite long. Its foundation was laid in 1804 and only on March 19, 1935 its sanctification by a diocesan by Poreczki Tryfon Pedersoli took place. Initially planned construction of a campanile was realized only in 1991.
3 naves of the building lean on 4 columns. The presbytery includes 2 arches decorated with the pictures of religious subject executed in 1946 by Antonio Macchi. In the first arch they recreate scenes from Street Martin and Street. Foskis lives in the second images of vegetation, flowers and trees, sheep and angels prevail.
The deserted lot, the summer residence of diocesans of Porek, the 12th, 13th century, is a monumental palace construction and is located in close proximity to Parish Street Martin's Church.
Initially on display in the 12th, 13th century, the modest palace in Romance style which after certain time was restored was built, its area was increased and walls are strengthened. In the architecture of the palace which reached our time it is possible to observe a cunning texture of styles from Romance to Baroque. From south side of the building there are 2 towers, in one of which, most likely, was located prison, intended for conducting observation. The palace has a large number of the rooms intended both for owners and for servants and guests. On the first floor water tanks, wind furnaces, the stable and also warehouse for storage of the agricultural products which are grown up in bishopric possession around the city were located. The press for an oil extraction. In hard times, during epidemics of plague or military operations, diocesans preferred to leave Porek and to move for a while to Vrsar. For example, during rebellion of 1299 in Porek, a diocesan Bonifacius found the shelter here. Some diocesans on a broader scale used this loch as permanent residence. Here too Ruggiero Crotoni's diocesans found the eternal haven. And Zambattista di Giudizi. In 1778, in connection with cancellation of the right for property, Diocesan's Poreczki Palace was transferred to state ownership of the Venetian Republic. In the 19th century, the palace was transferred to family of the patrician Vergotini. But in the 20th century, the palace gradually collapses and at present demands urgent restoration. The city gate, which were earlier a part of city walls, are located in east part of the city in close proximity to Church of Street. Kosk. Once they performed function of a main entrance in the strengthened city, behind which walls up to the 19th century there were some separate buildings and church. Executed in Roman style with carefully cut out semicircular arch, gate were constructed approximately in the 13th century. Their shard doors are made of Anastryski oak. Over an arched board at which there is a flower and the tiny image of a lion, a symbol of the Venetian Republic, is located. The lion, whose wings are raised and a tail is lowered, in the paws holds the closed Bible, small volume that speaks about its aggressive spirit. The open book symbolizes a peace spirit.
This image reminds the Venetian lions of the 14th, 16th century, therefore precisely it isn't possible to determine date of its emergence on gate.
The first such lions appeared on public buildings of the city at the end of the beginning of the 14th century. Also the version according to which the lion could appear on the present place after 1778, when Venice accepted Vrsar from Poreczki diocesans. From the 10th to the 18th century the city belonged to their archdiocese. Can't but deserve attention. In front of gate the schoolhouse, constructed in the 19th century, is located. Small city gate were constructed in the 13th century. At the time in construction on the Istrian peninsula the Romance style prevailed.
The construction consists of 13 stone blocks with precisely cut out semicircular arch and wooden shutters made of a local oak.
Over an arch it is possible to observe the remained fragment of city walls on which the coat of arms with the image of a lion is placed, similar placed on the main gate. Most likely that both lions are made the same artist. In the right top part of gate 2 metal kernels which, perhaps, from the English vessels fired the city occupied with Napoleonic army at the beginning of the 19th century are immured.
St. Anthony's Church, of construction of the second half of the 17th century, is located near Small City Gate.
The building is executed in mixes of Baroque styles and the Renaissance. Not the especially expressive facade, besides a rectangular entrance door, includes 2 square windows located from it on the different parties. Over a facade the campanile, in which in 1657, in a year after opening of the temple, the small bell ornated by images of Saint Anthony and other saints was established towers. Before an entrance to church the terrace with the wooden roof established on 10 stone columns with the arches connecting them is located.
Arches, typical elements of architecture of Istria of the 14th, 19th century, are a peculiar expansion of the place taken by the temple. Believers who couldn't enter into the crowded church during service could accommodate here and at the same time hide from the scorching heat and a rain.
The terrace was also used as a lodging for the night by those who didn't manage to get to the city before closing of the main gate, and as the venue of public court sessions. Now the internal interior of the temple is restored and in it there take place summer art exhibitions. In August in Vrsar there pass the International Days of a Sculpture. Near the city there is a sculpture park of the most famous Croatian architect of Dusan Zamonia, working in modernist style. Nature. Around Vrsar, the picturesque archipelago of small islands is located. Vrsar's climate Mediterranean, with soft winter and in the warm long summer. Average air temperature is +12 C in the winter, and in the summer of +24 C. Many houses in Venice were built of Vrsarski stone. Many Croatian temples, palaces and houses built of a local white stone were sorted to the basis by Venetians during their domination over these territories, and taken up. Thus, all white stone buildings of Venice are built of the former Croatian temples. The bases of many Venetian buildings are made of the oaks which are cut down on Istria. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.